Hello everyone, I'm Jordana Van of Ravenlight Holistic Healing, home of the most comprehensive animal totem and spirit guide information on the web, and welcome to Dragonfly as a Totem. In case you're new to the concept of totems and spirit guides, I actually have two videos on Dragonfly. This video is about Dragonfly as a totem, which means that Dragonfly is a lifelong teacher linked to certain aspects of your personality and the challenges you experience in developing those aspects to their highest potential. If instead, you're suddenly running into dragonflies everywhere and you're wondering if that means something, my Dragonfly as a Spirit Guide video may be more helpful for you. And if you'd like further clarification about the difference between a totem and a spirit guide, I have a video about that too, called Understanding the Difference Between an Animal Totem and an Animal Spirit Guide, which you can also find on my channel. Additionally, I'm now offering a limited number of one-off sessions each month. If you've always wanted to work with me, but you missed your window the last time, this is your chance. These are available to new clients only, and at this moment, only to U.S. residents, though I intend to return to seeing international clients in the future, so stay posted. For more information, including descriptions of the sessions I offer, the cost of each, and how to schedule, please visit my website, www.ravenlightholistichealing.com, and click on the Sessions tab. Don't email me directly to ask for this info because I will just direct you back to the website. So let's get started. I have to tell you guys, I must have rewritten the first half of this video at least half a dozen times, if not more. This is because it's impossible to talk about Dragonfly's most significant physical traits individually, as they inextricably reinforce each other. So we're going to start with a grouping of characteristics, and then we'll work through the collective symbolism. Each of the characteristics in this grouping plays a role in making dragonflies the best hunters on the planet. In scientific studies, dragonflies have been documented capturing approximately 90 to 97% of the prey that they target. While the prey capture rates of our most popular wild predators, lions and tigers, for example, are subject to considerable debate, biologists do agree that dragonflies leave other predators in the dust. So maybe that whole, eye of the tiger, woo, I'm the champion thing should really be eye of the dragonfly. Among the factors that make dragonflies so successful is their superior flying ability. Here again, there isn't any real consensus of how fast they are. Some reputable sources say their top speed is 35 miles an hour, some say 60 miles an hour. Some say they're the fastest insect flyers, while others say that honor belongs to the horsefly. But everyone agrees that they are fast, and they are indisputably the most agile. Each of their wings has an individual muscular connection to their thorax, enabling them to move each one independently. Unlike most other insects whose fore and hind wings are coupled together and who move their wings by rapidly flexing their entire thorax rather than controlling the wings themselves. This allows dragonflies to go forward, backward, up, down, or sideways at lightning speed, and even to hover in place. Their flight abilities are so unique and so sophisticated that aeronautical engineers have been studying them for years in hopes of duplicating them. Combined with this incredible flying ability are their eyes, which are another marvel. Dragonflies have some of the largest eyes relative to body size of any insect. Their two compound eyes take up most of their head, and each of these eyes has roughly 30,000 facets facing slightly different directions, with each of these facets possessing its own lens and its own light-gathering proteins. So the dragonfly receives over 60,000 different perspectives in a given moment. And because their eyes are so massive and there are an additional 3 simple eyes placed in between the compound eyes, their field of vision is nearly 360 degrees. They can literally see almost every aspect of everything going on around them. They only have one small blind spot directly behind them, and boy, are we going to come back to that blind spot later. Added to this is the fact that while human eyes are sensitive to only 3 types of photopigments, green, red, and blue, meaning that everything we see is a combination of those colors, depending on the unique species, dragonflies can see anywhere between 11 and 30 different photopigments, and they can perceive both ultraviolet and polarized light. In other words, they can see countless colors and visual subtleties that we can't. And on top of all of that visual input is processed at a rate of 200 frames per second. Humans process images at 60 frames per second. Essentially, dragons see in what to us would be slow motion, giving them ample time to react to visual stimuli. I feel a bit like an infomercial here, guys, but wait, there's more. Not only can dragonflies see every aspect of everything going on nearly 360 degrees around them, and not only can they do so at a rate of 200 frames per second in colors we can't even dream of, but they react to a prey's maneuvers in 50 milliseconds. By comparison, a human blink takes between roughly 100 and 300 milliseconds. Part of the reason that they respond so quickly is that when they choose an object on which to focus, they effectively lock onto it, just like a targeting computer. And they can maintain this lock even in the presence of a multitude of distractions. And the second the lock is achieved, their brains formulate a highly accurate prediction of the prey's trajectory. So they're not so much reacting to the prey's movements as anticipating where it's going to be. Dragonflies don't really deliberate. Sight equals knowledge equals action, and the sequence occurs so rapidly as to be practically simultaneous. What all of this amounts to in the dragonfly is the ability to keep an unerring watch on a single insect in a swarm, to know where it's going to be, to go after it while avoiding mid-air collisions with other insects in that swarm, and to scoop it right out of the air, rip off its wings with their claws so it can't escape, and then devour it on the spot 90 to 97% of the time. Dragonflies are master analysts, genius strategists, and they have the physical wherewithal to use those abilities to be nearly perfect hunters. They are among the apex predators of the insect world, and they have been for 300 million years. That's roughly 50 to 75 million years before dinosaurs appeared on the scene. Even more astonishing, the dragonfly is such a marvel of perfection that in all that time it has remained virtually unchanged, save for the fact that it is now a lot smaller due to a lower percentage of oxygen in the air. Why change when you're already perfect? So let's unpack all of that data and talk about precisely how it relates to dragonfly people. When you've got a creature that is so specifically adapted to be an aerial hunter, the emphasis is on qualities relating to the element of air, in this case, thought and analysis. Dragonfly people are effortlessly brilliant when an objective can be achieved through the use of logic, and so they usually excel in the STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and in creative pursuits which benefit from an analytical mind. In many cases, dragonfly people are legitimate geniuses. They certainly have some of the highest IQs out there. These guys are able to analyze a situation from every possible angle, including ones other people weren't even aware existed, grasp the fundamental elements, and formulate a concise strategy before anyone else has even figured out how to get started examining the problem. If you combined Aquarius, which is known for its singular brilliance, and Aries, which is known for its rapid grasp of the essentials, this is the sort of ability that would often result, and many dragonfly people do have significant Aquarius and or Aries placements in their astrological charts. Part of their genius comes from the fact that dragonfly people see mental challenges in a unique light, in the same way that dragonflies naturally perceive different colors and types of light that we cannot. Other people see only one aspect, maybe a few at best, while dragonfly people effortlessly perceive the whole complicated picture in glorious, multifaceted detail. In its most basic sense, it's as though other people are looking at a static 2D line drawing in black and white, while the dragonfly person is watching a full-color 3D video with the ability to pause and examine any area of interest to them at their leisure. And while the rest of us would likely be overwhelmed by the staggering amount of data we were receiving, The Dragonfly person can hone in on the pieces of greatest import to them and give it their undivided focus, completely ignoring the unnecessary bits. This also makes them fantastic in a crisis. In short order, they can coolly deduce what must be done first and implement a plan before the people around them have stopped panicking. Dragonfly people are not just elite problem solvers, they're natural engineers. They already possess an advanced understanding of how things work. Once a dragonfly has chosen its target, its brain immediately begins formulating the target's trajectory, and it does so correctly most of the time. It knows that if its prey is doing this, it will next do that. This is enhanced by the fact that dragonflies have been perfect little killing machines for 300 million years. 300 million, guys. They are beyond our conception of ancient. By extension, dragonfly people often function as though they have access to lifetime after lifetime of accumulated wisdom on how to do those things that can be understood with a visual sense and which occur in the field of space and time. If it can be comprehended through visual examination and observation, if it can be weighed and measured and timed and calculated, it tends to make sense to the dragonfly person, provided they want to focus on it, that is. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. For the moment, it's important to know that just because they can doesn't necessarily mean that they do. With regard to the understanding of multiple topics, dragonflies are able to be so focused on a target that they do not lose it in a swarm of other insects, yet they can switch targets in an instant if more appealing prey presents itself. In the same fashion, dragonfly people tend to become knowledgeable about a vast multitude of subjects on account of giving one subject the whole of their attention for as long as it seems worthwhile to do so, then effortlessly switching to something new. It's for this reason that most of my dragonfly friends know how to do so many different things and do them well that it makes my head spin. These are also the people, by the way, who can sit at a desk with 5 different computer monitors and switch back and forth between them without losing their minds. Instead of being distracted by all the competing input, they're able to focus on the pertinent monitor well enough to either complete a task or absorb whatever information it's providing. This isn't so much multitasking, doing a whole bunch of things at once, which often results in one or more of those things being done poorly, as it is an ability to rapidly switch between tasks without compromising them. Now, if a dragonfly person doesn't already know how to do something that interests them as though they've been doing it forever, they can read a manual or watch a video, and that's usually enough. When you already have an innate grasp of the fundamentals, of how things fit together and function with regard to the laws of physics, you're already most of the way there. My dragonfly husband completely rebuilt our lawn tractor last year just by reading the manual. He fixed our air conditioner after the repair guy said it was kaput, again, just by reading the manual. He has so many people begging him to repair or upgrade their technology from commercial entertainment systems to personal smartphones that he cannot keep up with them all. I badly wanted to learn how to knit, something simple compared to fixing the lawn tractor, but despite watching a whole bunch of videos, I just couldn't get it. I learned this kind of activity most effectively through guided experience as opposed to observation, and I just couldn't transfer what I was seeing on screen to what I was attempting to do with my hands. So, cue Dragonfly hubby, who, never having knit before, watched one video, learned how to knit, and then taught me. It might sound really freaking wonderful to be such a smarty pants, but dragonfly people can definitely experience their mental gifts as isolating. After all, everyone else grasps things more slowly than they do and is less interested in the higher level aspects of the topics that fascinate them. This can be really lonely. Not only is it tough to find satisfying conversation partners, but they struggle to find people who understand them. The absence of other people who function at their level is also a source of frustration for another reason, namely that when there is a ton of work to do, they are often the only ones capable of doing it as rapidly as the boss wants it done. In other words, right now. No matter how many times they may have attempted to explain the problem and the process to everyone else. Why doesn't anyone else get it? May as well be tattooed on the dragonfly person's forehead because they think it so often. While there isn't a lot one can do to improve the capabilities with those with whom we work, where their social lives are concerned, it is important for dragonfly people to seek friends who can look at the world the same way they do and who find higher level problem solving stimulating. Adult dragonflies are typically solitary, but they will come together in enormous swarms composed of different species for the purpose of hunting or migration. Similarly, dragonfly people need a lot of time to themselves, but they can have a great time getting together with people who share their intellectual capabilities and interests, especially with regard to strategy games, which they tend to find cathartic and fun. Dragonflies are master strategists, but they can only catch their prey in the air. By extension, dragonfly people are exceptional tacticians who gain the greatest nourishment from things that stimulate them mentally. Remember, air is the realm of the mind. They love the experience of zeroing in on a target, pursuing it relentlessly as it changes course again and again, and capturing their prize at last. They're often fans of video games, though they really do need to be careful here because if playing with people online is their only socialization, such superficial interactions can ultimately lead to them feeling more alone than ever. They may also enjoy chess or card games or sports such as pool or golf, in which a facility in physics and geometry combined with excellent hand-eye coordination is of greater import than physical strength or stamina. While dragonfly people are extremely active individuals, this doesn't translate to a passion for exercise in most of the dragonfly people I know. You might be the exception. But dragonflies have very strong legs and they can't walk, only perch. In a similar fashion, at least for the dragonfly people I know, the bulk of a dragonfly person's activity more readily occurs in the mental field rather than through the use of the physical body for the purpose of fitness. Many of these guys also possess a razor-sharp, insanely quick wit, but whether or not they actually share it with others tends to depend on what else is in their astrological charts. Dragonflies don't produce vocal sounds, and it is widely believed that they can't hear. So the normal emphasis on verbal communication associated with being an air creature, air also being the element which rules speech, is minimized. If you are lucky enough to find a dragonfly person able and willing to share their sense of humor, you're in for a real treat because these guys are freaking hilarious. Now, going back to the dragonfly person as inherently gifted in so many technical areas, dragonflies naturally succeed in capturing 90 to 97% of the prey that they target, and dragonfly people have an inborn knack for accomplishing most of what they set their minds to. But you'll notice that as extraordinary as the dragonfly's hunting success rate may be, it's not 100%. Dragonflies do fail to capture prey sometimes, and dragonfly people do sometimes fail to attain their goals, and they do make mistakes. Because they know how smart and capable they are, and because they tend to possess a ruthless perfectionistic streak, failures and mistakes can drive them nuts. They don't understand how these things happened, and then they beat themselves up and they ruminate like crazy, thinking that they must have done something both wrong and avoidable. The thing is, sometimes there is literally nothing that they could have done. Like the rest of us, they simply are not intended to be perfect. And sometimes there's nothing different that they should have done. Honoring our inner guidance and making a mistake as a result is sometimes actually the right choice because the experience which follows the mistake provides lessons that they couldn't have learned otherwise. I cannot tell you guys how many times this has happened to me and how long it has taken to finally accept that when I'm letting my higher self run the show and I make what seems to be a mistake, there's a good reason. And I can usually discover what it is if I'm patient. Dragonfly people really need to give themselves some grace here and let themselves off the hook when they fall short. It's gonna happen now and again, and that's okay. However, if they aren't making occasional errors, but are experiencing a pattern of errors, this is something they should pay attention to. And it's almost always because whatever they're doing or attempting to do isn't actually nourishing for them. Dragonflies are the best hunters on the planet because nature has designed them to positively excel in the art of catching prey and eating it. They're practically overachievers in this department. Physical nourishment in an animal is equated to spiritual or emotional nourishment in the people for whom the animal is a totem. So while dragonfly people can learn how to do just about anything, if it isn't going to feed their souls, their spirits are going to balk at using their energy that way. They simply aren't designed to waste their time. Consequently, that inner resistance will prevent them from giving the task all their incredible focus. And then they begin to make mistakes because they're still going about doing whatever it is they're doing at 1 billion miles an hour. Basically, they are speeding down the highway in a Bugatti and they're not watching the road. They can make some pretty spectacular blunders this way. Frequent errors, or the inability to master something after expending serious time and effort, should signify to a dragonfly person that it's time to evaluate whether or not the task is actually feeding their spirits. Does it make them feel energized, fulfilled, happy? Do they feel good about doing it, even if it's hard? If you give all of your time and energy to things that don't feed your soul, eventually your soul starves and your body follows. So those mistakes are alerting you to a really serious situation. Why are you doing the task? Do you really need to? Many of us are all too good at making unnecessary work for ourselves, including dragonfly people, who often think that they are the only ones who can do something and then jump in and do it when, with a little patience and time, other people really would finally figure out how to deal with it. Now, as I said before, experience has shown them that people probably won't figure it out. So you can see why they jump the gun here. But even then, even if it is so bad that the whole ship is going down, it may not actually be their responsibility to come to the rescue. In fact, the ship may really need to be taking on water before certain members of their family find the motivation to pull their own weight, or the boss realizes they need to hire additional competent employees. Assuming the task in question isn't actually your job and the boss isn't telling you to pick up the slack, how do you know you're taking on work you don't want to? Because you are endlessly resenting or complaining about it. If it were good for you, you'd be happy about it, or at the very least, you would feel some pride or satisfaction in doing it. If you aren't able to genuinely get yourself to be happy about it, for example, through looking at the purpose it serves or the rewards you attain and reconnecting with the pleasure in those things, changes need to be made. Make sure that what you're giving your focus to isn't going to leave you starving in the end. There's another critical factor which can detract from the dragonfly person's happiness and from their success, and that is self-doubt. Dragonfly people are meant to move quickly, unhesitatingly, in the same way that dragonflies follow a path that is more prediction than reaction. If a dragonfly person feels motivated to do something because the idea simply feels good, that's because they unconsciously know that it's going to be good for them. When they start analyzing that desire, they begin to think of all the reasons it doesn't make sense or that they shouldn't do it, and then they talk themselves out of it and they miss out on something that would have really fulfilled them. 2, all that intense predator energy does have to go somewhere, and unhitched from a nourishing purpose, it winds up being frittered away on activities that suck up the time but don't really stimulate them, and then they end up feeling empty and unsatisfied. Or, and more immediately damaging, they can turn that intense energy upon those close to them in the form of angry, cutting words. Think of all the focus, all the intensity that's put into the pursuit of prey, and then imagine how it would feel if that energy were abruptly blocked. You'd probably want to explode. Dragonflies belong to the scientific order Odonata, which means toothed one, a reference to their exceptionally powerful serrated mandibles or jawbones, which is what they use to hold and crush prey. Many internet sources will tell you dragonflies don't bite, but that's not true. They do bite, and people who study them will attest to this. It's just that most species are too small for the bites to produce any real discomfort or do any actual damage to a human. But If you remember what dragonflies do to their prey, and then if you consider how it would look if a dragonfly person were to treat those closest to them in that same fashion, you can see where there could be a serious problem. Creatures with powerful jaws and teeth represent the ability to do significant damage with one's words, to literally crush people or to rip them apart. When they have spent too much time in a state of denial due to self-doubt, and especially when someone close to them says or does something that touches on the source of that self-doubt, dragonfly people can go from being calm and logical to exploding in a fit of temper between one moment and the next. This can really shock you and them because it seems to come out of nowhere. In their mythology, dragonflies also exist in a state of oft conflicting extremes. A detailed discussion of their folklore is beyond the scope of this video. There is a ton, but much of it is reflective of the notion that dragonflies maliciously bite or sting people or domestic animals, that they behave as supernatural needles, sewing up eyes and lips while people sleep, and that they are servants of the devil or other malevolent creatures. Of the dragonflies' many, many names, a considerable number refer to them as devil's something or other. For example, devil's darning needle, devil's serpent, devil's horse, and devil's beast. Many more are references to their bite or sting. They don't sting either. Such as eye stabber, ear stabber, knife piercer, battle needle, horse needle, flying adder, and venomous bull serpent. In Wales, they are called snake servants. And in some places in America, we call them snake doctors for the belief that they warn snakes of danger and they sew wounded snakes back together. If a dragonfly is killed, the snake finds the person who did the deed and kills them in turn. Now, those who primarily believe this are the ones who don't like snakes and associate them with the devil. As the snake's compatriot, the dragonfly is viewed in an equally hostile light. And yet, in other places, they are associated with maidenhood and with love. In Denmark, one of their names translates to Little Miss, where in France, they are the very romantic and ethereal love butterflies. Italy calls them little nuns and little ladies, and several Scandinavian countries refer to them as water maidens. Far from the biting, stinging agents of evil, far from being biting, stinging agents of evil, some cultures also regard dragonflies as symbols of good luck. Among these is Serbia, which also associates them with youth and beauty, and Japan, where they also represent happiness, strength, courage, and success. The mythical first emperor of Japan, Jimmu, is even believed to have compared the shape of the nation to two dragonflies mating. As a result, Japan was once known to natives as Dragonfly Island. Elsewhere, dragonflies are affiliated with nymphs or fairies who are depicted with dragonfly wings or who use dragonflies as riding mounts. In this context, dragonflies represent freedom and magic and lightness of being. Dragonflies are whimsically featured in a vast assortment of artistic decor, and they're widely represented in jewelry. One thing that surprised me during my research is the number of crucifix pendants which feature dragonflies. Given the overwhelming number of dragonfly names which combine dragonflies and the devil, this was particularly interesting. So on the one hand, we have dragonflies as ethereal and magical and associated with beauty and light, happiness and luck. And on the other, we have a satanic needle out to bite you, sting you, sew your nostrils shut, or otherwise make you miserable. Ultimately, what this signifies is that dragonfly people are capable of some pretty dramatic extremes. They can be fabulously upbeat, sparkling souls that lighten the hearts of those around them and bring beauty to the world. This same person can also have their darker moments where they're angry and snappy, perhaps even shockingly so. Having moments like this does not make them any less a source of warmth, encouragement, and general lightness of being. Just as all that sunshine does not lessen the intensity of their outbursts. You can't really categorize a dragonfly person's personality. You just have to accept that they are complicated and unpredictable and love them in all their states of being. And here's where we're going to return to that blind spot I mentioned earlier, which is right behind them. Dragonflies are so inextricably linked to the symbolic aspects of sight and flight that dragonfly people tend to be vastly more comfortable with the realm of the visible, tangible, and predictable, those things which can be observed, calculated, planned, and controlled, than with the imperceptible, unpredictable, and unknown. This is heightened by the fact that they're day creatures, with many of them at least partially dependent upon the light and warmth of the sun for the energy to fly and hunt. You don't see many dragonflies when it's overcast. Daytime is associated with what is conscious and visible and known, whereas night is the time of the unconscious, the unseen, and the mysterious. 2, once they get going for the day, dragonflies move almost constantly. Resting makes them vulnerable to being eaten. Dragonfly minds, as we said earlier, are also constantly moving. Even in their downtime, they are usually thinking, strategizing, calculating, studying, and planning, as they are happiest when everything in their lives and in themselves makes sense. Consequently, things that cannot be understood are often instinctively avoided. Where that blind spot comes into play is when something activates strong, uncomfortable emotions attached to unresolved experiences from their past, things that they would rather leave behind them and have chronically avoided revisiting because doing so is unpleasant. Dragonflies rely on visually facilitated prediction to function successfully, and the dragonfly person's predictive abilities thus serve them very well as long as they stay focused on the present and the actual facts of the situation before them. When unhealed wounds, particularly those from childhood and adolescence, cause them to interpret the world through the cloudy lens of the past rather than the present, however, they always lose. Instead of moving forward towards joy from a place of confident optimism, their thoughts and the decisions that spring from them become tied up in trying to avoid imagined pain. This leads them away from what they want. Deep down, they do know that this is wrong, but no matter how hard they try, they can't seem to get to think away the emotions that are keeping them from getting back on track. Emotions are the most intangible, unpredictable part of the human experience, and being based in individual perception and not fact, are relatively immune to control through logic. And so the more frantically the dragonfly person tries to make themselves feel better, the more they are often overwhelmed by an escalating sensation of panic. If they're by themselves, they may finally manage to corral the scary feelings with a new idea or a plan of some kind. These plans tend to have relatively short lives because they are band-aids instead of true fixes. Eventually, the old wound breaks right through again. If there was someone when these old wounds are prodded, they'll often attack first and think later. When triggered, dragonfly people can react with extreme defensiveness or by fleeing the scene as fast as possible. Sometimes they do both. Remember that dragonflies react to visual observations of movement in a fraction of the time it takes to blink, and that many of those reactions are reflexive. There isn't a lot of thought involved, and by extension, dragonfly people often respond to even mild threats without thinking. Additionally, because dragonflies survive by flying, it's how they eat and it's how they keep from being eaten, dragonfly people aren't naturally the most grounded of individuals. If they can't use their minds to organize the chaos, they can panic because there's no permanent internal sense of surety that they can stand in the storm and still be okay. And here again, they need to give themselves some grace, as do those who love them. Considerable self-forgiveness and compassionate understanding will be needed as they learn in time to experience emotional storms, not as a threat, but as a tool to help them grow and thrive, and consequently to become less reactive. So how exactly does this happen? The things we refuse to face and feel hold tremendous power over us, far more than most of us realize. They're what prevent us from letting ourselves do what nourishes us, or they cause us to take on responsibilities that drain us. They're what cause us to doubt ourselves or to lash out at those we love. And they're at the root of chronic anxiety and depression. And dragonfly people who are actually tremendously sensitive tend to bear very deep wounds. When something pokes at those wounds and they freak out, their higher self is telling them that they're carrying unresolved pain, and it's time to go back into the water in which they were born so they can feel and heal and grow. In spiritual terms, Water is linked to our unconscious and to our emotions. And dragonflies are actually more water creatures than they are creatures of air. While we all recognize them in their adult form, zipping about on those beautiful gossamer wings, they actually spend the bulk of their lives underwater as larvae. Their mother lays eggs in the water or in the tissues of water plants. They hatch, and then they live and hunt in the water for 2 to 6 years, depending upon the species and the water temperature. During this time, they grow until their skin becomes too constricting, molt, and repeat the process sometimes over a dozen times before at last emerging from the water, shedding their final larval skin and taking to the air as the dragonflies we know. And while they may spend years underwater as juveniles, the adult dragonfly only lives an average of 5 weeks. It takes a lot of time in the water to achieve that finished form. In the same way, dragonfly people only attain the height of their intellectual ability, confidence, success, joy, and peace with a lot of time in the water realm, which means letting go of intense mental activity and allowing themselves to be in a nebulous state of feeling instead. Every time they're ready to grow beyond their current emotional limitations, they'll begin to experience uncomfortable feelings more frequently, and that will tell them that some time in the water is in order. Now, any truly good healer will tell you that to heal, you need to feel. This is true whether the issue is mental or physical or both. Feelings become locked in our psyches and in our cells when we're not allowed to feel them completely at the time they first occur, whether someone else has told us that we aren't allowed to feel what we feel, or it's we ourselves who've given that commandment. And so to get these things out of our bodies and our spirits so that we can let our true selves run the show again without being continuously hamstrung by the voices of our old wounds, we have to feel them. This process could be a video in and of itself, and believe me, I'm working on making one. But in a nutshell, whatever you're feeling, even if you can't put a name to the sensation, accept it and let yourself be in the sensation without trying to change it, rationalize it, minimize it, make it stop, or tell yourself you shouldn't have it for any reason for as long as you can stand it. I always tell clients, feel, don't fix. Take your mind out of the equation and just try to exist in the sensation as though you were standing in a river. You can't change a river's flow by thinking at it. You can only experience it as it is. Feelings aren't facts. So as terrifying as this might be, and as much as your mind is going to give you a million scary reasons not to let yourself feel, just feeling cannot hurt you. With time, patience, and determination, it can only set you free. For dragonfly people, the best place to do this is in or around the water. Get in the bath or shower, take a swim, float in a lake or pool, water your plants, stand in a rain puddle with a cup of tea, watercolor a picture. Get back in touch with your inner baby dragonfly who nourishes itself and grows in the water and is utterly at home. If you do this as often as you can, for as long as you can, and with the big stuff, sometimes that means for 30 seconds to 5 minutes a few times a day, and you do this for weeks or months or longer. Whereas with the small stuff, you might need mere minutes. Eventually, the feelings really do just dissipate, and you hit this incredible place where you can look at a wound, even the most deepest, excruciating trauma, and touch it, feel into it, and feel absolutely nothing but acceptance. Sometimes even tremendous love for the people involved. In this place, it can't trigger you anymore because there is nothing left to trigger, and it can't control you because it no longer provides any feedback about the way you approach the world. You can move as you want to move, not as you fear you must. Getting here is not easy, but you can stay trapped in a prison of fear, a small, suffocating skin who is not who you are, and which will feel increasingly confining over time, or you can dive into what at the start will probably feel like the deepest, darkest part of the ocean. Stay stuck or get started already. As the saying goes, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. While a dozen different studies claim that a dozen different insects have the longest migration, we do know that dragonflies are among the statistical leaders as far as migration length is concerned. The dragonfly person's journey to being their most unfettered, incredible dragonfly self is a long one, and it requires endurance. You just have to commit and commit over and over again. One of the greatest rewards of sticking with this process is that when a dragonfly person learns how to feel their feelings, they develop the ability to draw not only from their intense mental capabilities, which are tied to their being air creatures, but also on their profound intuition, which is the result of being a water creature. This is when the real awesomeness starts. Here, their predictive abilities become even more finely tuned, leading to profound synchronicities and moments of inexplicable bliss. And they find themselves increasingly in the right place at the right time. They aren't just analyzing the logical components of a situation, they're tuning into aspects of divine order that are visible to the third eye alone and moving accordingly. This is where their creativity, which is also linked to water, also begins to bloom beyond anything they've experienced before, because intuition and analysis are now working seamlessly together rather than one dominating the other. This is where their true genius is revealed. The final aspect of the dragonfly person's relationship with water that we're going to cover has to do with their intense sensitivity to the emotions of others. Just as dragonfly people can be utterly overwhelmed by the force of their own emotions, they are hypersensitive to those of everyone else and can be utterly crippled by feelings that aren't even theirs. Worse, they don't usually realize that this is happening. This is especially true when they spend too much time in the presence of chronically negative people, such as those who intentionally create drama, complain rather than act to change or improve, eternally see themselves as victims and blame everyone else for their problems, or otherwise exist under a sustained cloud of powerlessness. These guys are absolutely toxic for dragonfly people and will do a rapid number on their mental and physical health, making them feel depressed, angry, frightened, and sometimes physically ill. This is because dragonfly larvae are severely affected by changes in water flow and water pollution. They're so sensitive, in fact, that the number of dragonflies in an aquatic area is a reliable indicator of the relative health of the water. To grow, baby dragonflies need pure, untroubled water, which for dragonfly people translates to tranquil surroundings and lots of time alone to emotionally detox. When they are with people, these should be individuals who, while they may sometimes struggle like we all do, are generally confident, grounded, and positively oriented. Dragonfly larvae also need strong self-protective measures, which they have in the form of a specialized lip, sometimes with pinchers on the end, that shoots out and seizes any other insects that get too close, including other dragonfly larvae. Even as babies, they are perfect predators. To nourish and protect themselves, and to give themselves the ability to grow, dragonfly people need to defend their boundaries with forceful speech, rather than allowing themselves to be contaminated by the walking emotional cesspools out there. All of this is further emphasized by the dragonfly's predator-prey relationship with the mosquito, which is one of its primary foods. Dragonflies in all stages of their lives are known to be an exceptional method of mosquito control. And if mosquitoes are a problem in your area, some sources actually suggest that you create spaces around your home that attract dragonflies. More dragonflies naturally equal fewer mosquitoes. In metaphysical terms, mosquitoes are energy suckers. This is because blood is related to vitality, to our life force. Some individuals, in their desperation for love, attention, facilitation, validation, or just someone whom they can complain, literally suck us dry. So the physical mosquito sucks blood. These people are sucking out our vitality and energy. You know you've run into one of these people because you feel tired after talking with them, or you are headachy, or you have an upset stomach. You may also experience an allergy attack. Our body reacts to emotional irritants the exact same way it reacts to environmental ones. This can happen even if you've only spoken with these people on the phone. They have taken from you and left nothing behind but irritation and illness. These are the mosquitoes of the world. If you're a dragonfly person, you will strengthen yourself every time you remember your power and unambiguously refuse to give your energy to these people. You are the predator here, and they cannot threaten or control you. And while they may perceive your saying no to their needs as a personal attack on them, this is not a reason for you to keep silent. There's a reason we say the truth hurts. It doesn't feel good when someone rejects us or points out that we're trying to manipulate or use them. A person who is growth-minded will take your words, ponder them, and then use them to help themselves become more empowered, no matter how hurt they were when you first spoke them. Someone who does not want to change and who just wants others to do for them will be offended and stay that way. While it would be lovely if everyone used every experience of being offended or triggered to grow, we all know from the wonderful world that is the internet that this is not true for most people. So be prepared for some pushback and know that you can handle it. Be direct, even harsh if needed, but not intentionally cruel. You do not need to diminish others to stand in your power. With continued practice, you'll begin to see that it is not your responsibility to give your energy to someone just because they want it, and you'll feel more and more confident in your ability to set boundaries and say no when needed. I hope this has given you guys the answers for which you were searching. For more information about me or my work, to book a session, or to access my video library, please visit my website, www.ravenlightholistichealing.com. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Cheers!